Flipkart really gives you the opportunities to show your best. The hype around cloud is done with, I think AI
Right.
is the next wave. One client mentioned, you know what, I think you're better suited to be a product manager than as a developer. I think statistics was where I was bad at, and my speed in math was also poor. But I also realized CAT is about not just about how many questions you can get right, it's also about how many questions you understand you don't know
Right.
the answer to and skip.
A reasonable strategy for them is actually taking their business model global.
What they mean by product for a company like Flipkart is the value that they deliver. And in case of Flipkart app, the value that they deliver could even be as simple as a
Okay.
search bar that they have. After that, I went on to work at Cognizant as a programmer analyst.
So, guys, it's my pleasure to introduce everyone to Rinku. She's a batch of 2017 from IIM Bangalore, 17 years junior to us, almost a generation. And she has very interesting journey. She's been at Flipkart, she's been at Microsoft, and today we are going to use the next 1.5 hours to talk about interesting things about how she got into IIM, her life there, and more importantly, how she's doing as a product manager at Microsoft and what she sees as opportunities both for people who are product managers and opportunities for entrepreneurs. And we are going to keep it interesting, fast moving, and a lot of value for our listeners. So, Rinku, thank you for coming to the channel. It seems very good. Like, I think IMB did something to all of us that even when we meet, we feel like there's some common thread because we were in the same building for and with the same professors, the same culture for 2 years. That as soon as I meet someone, I feel like, Acha, I know this person. I know a little bit about this person. So, Rinku, can you tell us a little bit about your growing up? Where did you grow up? How was your childhood like, and so on?
Okay. So I
Okay.
basically grew up in Chennai. I was there for 24 years. IIM Bangalore was my escape from Chennai because that's when I finally got to move out of the city. So prior to IIM Bangalore, I did my B in computer science and engineering at Chennai again. And then I worked for 2 years in Chennai. So there was an interesting time where, I was rushing to catch the bus to office. And I would do that almost every day. I'm out of breath, I'm running, and that's the only bus that is there to office. And the conductor was like, you know what? I don't know why you're getting so stressed because I earn way more than you, and look at how much I chill. You seem too stressed for the amount you're earning, and that kind of got me thinking. Okay, I think this is not where I see myself in the long run. So took cat prep more serious after that, and sort of
So Rinku,
landed
where
in
were you
IIM
working
Bangalore
at
after
that
that.
time? What was the stress all about?
Though, so it wasn't stress from the work per se. Like I mentioned, there was just one bus that goes to work. So if I miss the bus, then it's going to be like I have to take like two, three buses and then maybe an auto to reach work. So that's where the stress really was. I had to take this
So
bus.
you said you did your engineering from Chennai. Is that right? And so where was that?
Right.
And what
Yes.
subject?
So that was at St. Joseph's
Okay.
College of Engineering. So yeah, that was computer science mostly. Then, in my MBA interview, I was asked, "What's so special about your college this year that three of you made it to the interview round of IIM Bangalore?" And my response to that was food. I think my college has one of the best food in town. Then after that, I went on to work at Cognizant as a programmer analyst. So I was a software
So I
developer
still
there.
remember, Rinku, like, so 15, 20, 25 years ago, very few women did engineering. And right now, we've had a few women, I am alumni. Actually, all three were I am Bangalore, and all three have been engineers. So more recently. So we've had five women alumni,
Yeah.
but the last three were all engineers. So I'm amazed. Is that like a sign of the times, or do we just have a bias sample set?
I think it's definitely a sign of the times because my batch had, or at least my department had 50%
Wow.
women in computer science. I think depending on the department, the strength would change. Mechanical department had around 5 to 10 of them. So compared to what I've heard earlier, it used to be 0 or 1. So I think it's a sign of the time and a sign of all the opportunities we get as well as all the opportunities the women are
Right,
grabbing. So
right. So Cognizant, you did coding in Cognizant. How many years were you there?
So I was there for almost 2 years. Almost 6 months of it went into training. So we were learning how to code and everything. So 1.5 years was spent in project. So I worked specifically in healthcare. the goal of the product I was working on was to make the claim process easier. So just to give a quick background, like if you are based out of the US and a pharmacy wants to introduce a new medicine to you, what they do is they take it, they test it on a lot of people before they
Yes.
hit the market, right? Now for the pharmacies to find people to test those medicines is very difficult. So we worked on a app which when patients check into a hospital would kind of try and see if their symptoms match against what the pharmacies are looking for, their clinical trials, and then would kind of indicate, hey, this patient looks like a candidate, so that the pharmacies can then connect with the patient, get their consent, and have a clinical trial start. So I worked on the software that
That's a
automates
very
this whole
interesting sector. I've
process.
been in the healthcare sector for many years now, and clinical trials and the technology that's and targeting and everything. It's the biggest profit driver for that industry. Whether you can get the right patient. So you got into the thick of it right after your engineering. Two years. Were you
Yes.
only doing healthcare, or were you doing other
Right.
sectors
Yes.
also alongside?
No, so I was assigned to the healthcare BU and mostly worked on
Okay,
automating the
okay. And
claims
and how was
process
your
for those
work-life
one
balance there,
one and a
apart
half
from catching the bus on time?
The work life balance was actually, I think, quite good in the sense we were not given a laptop per se. Then back
Hmm.
then we had a desktop, so you worked only while you were at office, right? Once you go home, you shut down. I think that really helped with my cat prep as well because once I'm home, then I could focus on So I the way I approach cat is I bought a book. It had 300 pages. Let's say I had 100 days to write my cat. I would divide 300 by 100 and make sure I do 30 pages a day. I mean, I'm just giving a rough idea of how I went about it. So I had a goal like that. So every day I would finish 15 pages before I go to office, maybe 15 pages after I come back from office. So I think work-life balance was pretty good, which helped me prep for CAT
But
as well.
that's good. So, but I'm very curious. Why did you even think about CAT? You didn't want to do technology. You graduated in computer science. You were doing computer coding in some way or the other, and you would have grown through
Yeah.
as a career in
So
that. Did you never
I
see that as a career? You got a job in computers. What more would you need? And why did you even think of doing management?
Okay. What more would I need? Well, my credit card bills were higher than my salary at that point in time. I realized lifestyle cost was going up compared to my salary. I'm sure all of us would have heard, right, about the kind of salary you get in Cognizant at an entry level developer. So that was hitting hard. Like I said, there were these small incidents like the one with a bus conductor making fun that, hey, he's having it way easier than me studying engineering. And then there were a few other motivations, like my parents wanted me to get married, and the only option, economical option that you have to do higher studies is either CAT or GATE, right? And GATE was required a lot of prep and getting technical and all of that. So the easier option was CAT. So that's kind of how I narrowed on CAT. So I would be like, hey, I'm preparing for CAT, not getting married right now. It's kind of a way. And my dad also had this belief. So he's an MBA grad, and he had this belief it is IIM or nothing. So basically, I could
Yeah.
only just apply for CAT and IIMs, and thank God
So
managed to
you had
crack
this
into
you
IIM
had this
Bangalore.
target that in case I don't get into IM, I'll be married off. So I have to really fight hard for it.
Yeah,
Because I'll tell
yeah.
you, Rinku, so as coders and all
Again,
that, I
keeping
know
it
it might look different when you're at a junior level. But the way I see it, that the top coders and who then become entrepreneurs and have their own startups, they end up making way more than some of our MBAs who are in corporate jobs all their lives working for other people.
I think one more thing I wanted to add is at that point in time, I had little to no awareness about all these jobs and the career options I had. I did not know what product management is until I think way towards the end of my stint at Cognizant, and one client mentioned, you know what, I think you're better suited to be a product manager than as a developer. And I was like, hey, what does that mean? And I did not really pay attention to that comment much until I joined IIM Bangalore, and then there was this whole, should you get into consulting or should we get into product management, or a bunch of other options. And that's when I got to know, okay, these options are out there, these roles are very different. If you choose this path, here's the career arc that you're looking at. So I think awareness about how your career would be, the choices, like you mentioned, hey, if you'd been in tech, maybe you would have made more money. I did not have that knowledge. And I think that way I'm really happy with how I think IIM has created that awareness for me. And today, at least going forward, I know I'll be
And
making
I
better
think
and
for our
informed
viewers who are
decisions.
watching, we will cover this, and Rinku will, in the second half of this episode, tell us more about careers and how to succeed, whether as a developer or as a product manager, and the choices she made and what she has learned now. So maybe many of our viewers can learn that even without going to IIM, if that is. But Rinku, so you started preparing for CAT. You had this goal. You had this goal. It's marriage or IIM. Your father has already put a target. So you had. How did you start? How did you find out how to prepare? Now
So
I know it's a different generation, but when I had to start, I had no clue what to do. And most of the people, because I was also in electronics, and most of the people were either looking at doing MSc or going abroad and things like that in the electronics and computers field rather than doing an MBA. But then this was back in the 90s without internet.
right. So for me, I think as a person, I'm a very hopeful person and more confident sometimes than maybe required. So without any prep, I try to give CAT exam in my fourth year of engineering, trying to see how much I would score, and then try to land in any of the colleges at that point in time. And I did not get a good enough score. But what that test did tell me is, hey, these are your strong fortes, because I'd scored 90 plus in the verbal and quant, right? Verbal part of it, or the qualitative part of it. And then the quants part of it, I was low. So at least I knew, hey, this is where my weakness is. So that was the first learning. And since I'd given the mock, I kind of did not have a fear for the exam. So I think the next step that I did was join with one of those academies, the Times or something like that. And once I joined them, they had mock exams that would, give you a breakdown of which topics you're good at, which topics you're bad at. And I think that breakdown really helped because, like I said, I was juggling work and CAT prep, right? So one of the things I would do is pick one of the topics they had listed as my weak topic, and then either take up some online quizzes, or I would read up more on those. I would have a formula book where just the highlights of those topics I'm weak at, I would note down shortcuts and things like that. I would note down, and I would keep referring those notes even when I'm whenever I get some free time, so that I'm getting stronger at those topics, right? And so that kind of helps. So mock exams, focusing on the topics I'm weak at, making sure I capture the highlights of those topics and revise them. And like I said, I think beginning of the recording, I mentioned that I bought a book of, like, say, 300 pages, and let's say I had like 100 days to CAT, that I kind of divided that 300 pages by 100, so that's almost like what, 3 pages a day. Sorry, yeah. So then I would make sure I finish those number of pages and prepare for the CATing. So that really helped, breaking it down into smaller achievable task every day, so it was just a checkbox, and that kind of really helped me.
And so you were telling us about all the topics you were good at. What are the kind of topics? Because I'm pretty sure things have changed a lot, although the basics remain the same.
Yes.
What are the different sections and topics you have in the CAT?
So it's been almost 10 years since I gave the exam, so I'm not remembering the specific topic as such. But like I said, from the first attempt at CAT itself, I knew my number game sucked. So the second time also,
Hmm.
when I gave the mock exams, also I pretty much told the same. I think statistics was where I was bad at, and my speed in math was also poor, is what I understood. So there were few things that I did to improve on these, practice more for the stat topic. Like I said, have a formula book, note down all those quick shortcuts and all. And for speed, what I did is
Hmm.
I would take a timer and set it, let's say, for 10 minutes. And I'm not sure now, but I did some kind of reverse calculation to figure out per question how
Right.
much time can I spend, right? And because I also realized CAT is about not just about how many questions you can get right, it's also about how many questions you understand you don't know
Right.
the answer to and skip, right? So the idea was, within that time, I have to figure out whether I can answer this question or not and move on to avoid the negative score. So what I would do is I would take like 10 questions and target it, let's say, for like 15 minutes, and see how much I'm able to answer, mark myself on accuracy, speed, and try to improve on that. And again, I would go back, write the mock exams, see if I've improved in those areas. Next, what is a weak area to tackle? So it's kind of like an iterative way
Yes,
that I
yes,
kept
and
improving.
I think you picked up a very important point in that. Is it's it's an entrance test. CAT is an entrance test for management education. It's not an entrance test like an IIT entrance where they're trying to see how much you know. Here they are trying to see how much do you have a self awareness that I don't know, like you said, to skip those questions. It's about prioritizing your own strengths and weaknesses and then taking it forward and then maximizing your score. So I think you hit the nail on the head, and you practiced to improve your weaknesses, and your two weaknesses were, like you said, stats and timing in maths.
Yeah.
How did you
Yeah.
know within those sections that what you're good at? I mean, within stats there must be different types of questions, and the reason I'm asking is nowadays I've heard that there are loads of online coaching, but you didn't do an online coaching, if I understood that correct. And then 10 years ago, though,
No.
without online, how do you analyze your weaknesses, that this type of question I'm good at, that type of question I'm not good at?
Actually, I think by the time I was doing the course, Times did have an online
Okay.
mock exam, which is how I remember practicing it. You would have these, they would organize it in school labs. So you would go take those tests and they would give you like a analysis of
Right.
the test, the breakdown and everything. In fact, they used to have their own percentile system, which was way more brutal and compare you with the rest of the time student and give you percentiles and all of that. I think they did. What the mock exam did not have, which I think CAT had, is CAT, if I remember right, has this adaptive thing. The more tougher the questions you answer, higher the chance of the next question is tougher, which I think the Times one did not have. It would be standard questions for everybody, if I remember right. But yeah, they might have
Okay,
improved in
okay,
the
that's
last
very
few years.
interesting.
I'm
I
not
didn't
very
know that CAT is adaptive now. I had no clue. I know GMAT is adaptive, but CAT I thought was the same set of
okay.
questions or like for everyone. But that's I mean,
Okay. Again, it's been 10 years since I took the exam, so we have to verify
absolutely,
that before.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
this was your second attempt. You were giving you'd done it in your fourth year, and then you did a bit of
Yes.
mock test coaching, and then you gave it again. What happened then? How many calls did you get? What
Yeah.
happened?
So, how many calls did I get? IIM Bangalore was the top
Hmm.
IIM call that I had. I did have calls from the smaller IIMs, IIM Trichy and so on. And yeah, I was actually not planning to attend my IIM Bangalore interview because I was like, I don't think I can crack this interview. I was telling my mom, like, I don't think I can crack this interview. So, like, why bother going? I have an important client visit at work. I might get better visibility if I stay back. I'll go for the smaller IIMs.
And
Anyway, a lot more IIMs to
your
attend
dad
that.
was happy with, as long as it
And
starts with an IM, it doesn't matter.
Rinku, you just told us you're an optimistic
yeah, it
person.
doesn't matter. And
We started the interview with you saying you're optimistic.
yeah, I am an optimistic person who was evaluating her options, and the option was, like I said, a client was visiting also at work, and it meant good visibility, right? So it was, hey, do I juggle between this important client visit versus an IIM Bangalore interview? And I was optimizing for that. But yeah, it was my mom who said, no, no, I think this is one of those things which if you don't try, you're gonna regret. So go for it. So mom and I went to IIM Bangalore and we gave the interview. And yeah, it went surprisingly well. And on that note, even for the interview preps, there were mock interviews that I had attended. Most of them were either IIT grads or people who had cracked IIM before but did not for it kind of folks, right? So I had given interviews with them and they kind of helped evaluate, okay, what needs to improve and how to get better, what are some basic questions to work on.
And is that
And
just
that
mock
really helped
interview?
as
Is
well.
that like a particular course that you had to pay for, or was it with people you knew who helped you?
So it was all part of the
Okay,
package that I had opted for my
right.
coaching. So it included those mock tests, it included offline classes, and it included mock interviews once
See,
you
Vix,
get
now
your IIM
this is
calls.
where why I think she is an optimistic person. Because someone like me, I would never pay for the interview thing until I got the interview. I would say, "Ki boss, let's do cat. I got interview, फिर पैसे देंगे उसके. I'm not
Same
taking the
with me.
entire package."
Same with me.
So, oh, but for the record, I did not know there was an interview for IIM Bangalore. I just thought you write cat, and then they sought people. Like I said, I was really low on awareness, right? I think for me, everything, all of these process, I was discovering as it happens. Like, for example, there is an initial fees you have to pay to confirm your seat in IIM. I did not know about it. I was not prepared for it. It took some time to figure out how to even navigate your finances for the IIMs and so on. So I think for me, I learned a lot on the way, which is all the more reason I'm glad to be doing this. Create that awareness for people, so when they make the decision, they can be more confident
So you took this
in how they
interview
go about
prep
it.
and you reached IM Bangalore Bangalore. Tell us about. Did you miss your client visit, or did you do it?
Yes, that did not go really well, but anyway, I did miss it. So I went to the interview. So I think back then we had GD. So there was group discussion on the topic of how can we prevent swine flu, I think. And we also had to make some notes or essay, write an essay on it maybe. So that was there. And then we had an interview. It was one person against four, five people. I remember there was someone with a laptop there fact checking as I
Oh,
speak. So yeah, because I got my billion, trillion, some one of those numbers off, and he was like, "No, are you talking about this?" And then I was like, "Oops."
very good, very good. I think that's good because
So yeah,
nowadays with technology, not just the way the world is moving, because that's real life. People do fact check you all the time. In fact, sometimes when you're saying something, you will see Vix frantically typing because he's doing it online right now. So that's always going to happen. And but great. But
And
Rinku, I just
that fact
remember.
checker was someone from IIM Bangalore who was fact checking.
I think it was the alumni who was part of the panel. We again,
Might be one of
I
us
just
who
know
go there
someone
for
fact
interviews,
checked.
and
I
then because
don't
we are
really
used to
recall
fact
who
checking everything that
did
people
that.
say, must be doing that. But Rinku, I just remembered you were talking about missing a client visit. We had one of our previous guests was in the planning commission when he wrote the IAM, and he literally had to go for the IAM. I don't remember whether it was the cat or whether it was for the interview after finishing a meeting with Montek Singh Aluwali. So he did that, and then he rushed to. So he didn't miss that meeting because I think that meeting would have been a bit too big to miss with Montek Singh Aluwalia, who was the head of the planning commission back then. But yeah, we've had guests like that also. I think a client showed in cognizant that probably wasn't that bad, at least in hindsight. What would have happened had you
Yeah,
not got into IIM?
yeah.
Would you have received a lower rating or something for missing that?
I don't think I would have received a lower rating because at that point in time I was doing well in my job. The reason they wanted to have the client have me at the client visit was because the client had asked, okay, we've only worked with her
Okay.
online, like can we meet, right? I think I was doing fine, which is probably where again the confidence came that I can wing it. Yeah.
Good, good. So you cracked IIM Bangalore. You got there, or did you also get do the other smaller IIMs and hedge your bets?
No, I think I gave my IIM Bangalore interview and the results for IIM Bangalore came before the smaller
Right.
IIM, so did not give the interview. That's how I remember.
Actually, you know what?
Again, something
As you're
to
saying
check.
it, I think that is
And
good because then it saves time for some of
mhm,
the newer IIMs to not interview candidates who are anyways not going to come if they got into say a Bangalore or an Ahmedabad or somewhere else. So it
right,
saves them time. Otherwise, they'll be
right.
interviewing so
But
many
this is
people who
again something to be
won't take this, and then that whole waitlist drama is unnecessary.
unnecessary. This is again how I remember, but it's worth checking once if their dates are much up in Bangalore and Ahmedabad.
So you got in, and your dad was fine with okay, marriage is postponed now.
Marriage is definitely postponed. My dad was very, very happy. I think he had almost tears in when I graduated. So it was definitely one of his, I did not expect, but wow. My daughter did it kind of moment for him.
Right. And Rinku, just now on the personal side, do you have brothers, sisters who have done something similar, or were you the first in the family who's been into IIM?
First in the family to get into IIMs. My siblings are quite younger than me. One of and my sister is like 6 years younger than me, quite different from me. She's more very creative compared to me, who's more of a nerd. And then I have a brother who is 16 years younger than me. He's writing his 12th standard
Wow.
exam right this year. So
And what about cousins, first, second cousins?
let's hope
Anyone
for the
else in
best.
IIM, or you are the first?
No, so I am actually the eldest on both the sides among the cousins. So my mom was the eldest in her family, dad's the eldest. I became the ultimate eldest on all sides.
Right,
So
right.
yeah,
So you are the role model for all first, second cousins in your family.
actually these days I learn from them as well.
Nice, nice. So Rinku, tell us about IIM Bangalore. How was your journey there? What did you learn? What did you like and not like about IIM Bangalore?
So to be candid, I think IIM Bangalore, the first term of it was a bit of a shock to my system because I think I grew up only in Chennai, and then language wise in Chennai we either speak English or Tamil, right? And suddenly you have like a lot more people speaking in a lot more languages, and I think for me to process all of that did take some time. So that was one. Second thing I think is the level of freedom that I got with joining IIM. Just like in Chennai, at least, I guess, because parents were there and friends and family, everybody were around. There was always this, you meet them quick, you're back home by 10, but here's IIM, and then you're stretching to like 3 a.m. to finish off those assignments and all of that. I think even that was a little bit of a shock to me, the way I have to manage my times and all of that. So these were some of the things that did shock me. But on the other end, it was also exciting new opportunities. I never thought, the world could be so full of options, and you make your own decisions and all of that. So it was definitely exciting. I think the first week of IIM, where you get to meet your seniors, all of that was really, really fun. So it was a bit of a trade-off there, like the shock versus embracing the new. And I think by second term, I had really adapted to the IIM
But language and
life.
all these things aside, what was the biggest cultural shock to your system,
Mhm.
which you never thought would happen right in front
Uh,
of you? Was there anything like that?
I think there was one thing that really shocked me was the way the cultural funds are done, right? At least in my undergrad, we would look at we bare minimum funds, right? And we kind of never really dreamed big. But in IIM, the way the sponsorship works and the way the dreaming happens for those cultural events and all was just crazy, right? It's like, hey, let's have a car in the middle of the ground and all those concerts and things like that. So I think that was another thing, like dream big, right? I think it took me some time to come out of that because I was capped by my limitations before, but then to understand, hey, now I can dream big and it can actually come true, that was another shocker.
Right, right. So, and what about the academics? Was it you came from like a computer science engineering background, and on the other hand, there would be a lot of people from more liberal arts background and all that who we hear sometimes struggle a bit more in catching up with the studies and all that. So, did you
Right.
find academics
Right.
challenging or very different, or it was all fine?
So academics was a mixed bag. I think subjects like related to marketing and yeah, those kind of courses I was really good at. But the subjects that are related to accounting, I was horrible at. Like no matter how hard I tried, I didn't think I could clear those. And I think till the end, I struggled with understanding those concepts. That's something I think I wish I had some extra help to manage. That was yeah,
Right,
subject wise.
right.
That's where I
I
struggled.
remember now. This I know this is a long time ago, but I doubt how much things have changed. When we reached there, obviously the first term is a shocker for many people, is because now you're competing in a different crowd. But then by the end of the first term, whatever happens, the second term was all about summer placements. The moment you land, and people tell you before you go off on the term break, is you're gonna come here. It'll be summer placements. How does it work now? When you were there, how did the summer placements happen?
Yeah, so it was pretty much what you said. And like I told you, right, I was very low on awareness of the entire process. So I wasn't aware there's going to be an interview for, internship. I mean, I don't think I even knew there was this concept of internship till someone said, hey, we have like interviews lined up for internship. And I was like, oh, wow, what's this concept of internship and all of that, right? I mean, yeah, I was quite unaware of how things work. So you're like you rightly pointed out, second term does go into your resume prep, getting your resume verified. There is that working on it with the placecom team and realizing that you have a long way to go. Getting meeting up with seniors to understand their interview process, and so you can prepare for yours. So these were some of the things that we had to do in the second term, in addition to juggling work and assignments and all of that, keeping the internship focus, right? And then again, I think it would happen in your fourth or fifth term. Again, you
Hmm.
start preparing for interviews. You would have the lateral hiring happening for those with more than 2 years of experience, and you have the final interview for the freshers and those who didn't get the right opportunity in laterals,
Right. But
trying
that's
again in
final
the
placements you're
finals.
talking about. But summer
Yes,
placements, does it
yes.
happen? What's the structure? How does summer placements work at IIM Bangalore?
Right. So summer placements, final placements, if, have pretty
Okay.
much the same structure. So at least when I attended, because I hear GD is not very popular these days, but when I attended, there would be one day dedicated to just attending GDs of the companies that have shortlisted you
So all
based on your
companies come on the
resume.
same day,
And
or
then
or
so GD, I remember
right?
being a hectic day and attending a lot of companies, but did it happen over two
Okay.
days? I'm not sure.
So just GD. You go from one room
Yeah,
to
but
the
I
other
just
room,
remember,
just talking and
yeah,
talking and talking and talking and
yes,
talking.
yes. You really need to have your stamina in terms of being able to talk ready for that. So you give GDs to the companies that have shortlisted you, and then if you're shortlisted in the GDs, then you have your interviews. Now, interview is where you have like day zero, day one, day two, day three kind of a thing lineup. I think day zero mostly goes to consulting firms and the really the best offer company. Then you have day one firms, which are the next wave
Hmm.
of companies looking to hire
And
and
is
hire
there a
and hire.
gap
So
between
that's
the
how it
GD
happens.
day and the day
Uh,
zero, one, two, three?
if you don't have a day zero
Of
shortlist, you
course.
definitely get a break.
So GD ke baad
Yeah,
immediately
of
day
course you get
zero.
a
Is
break.
that right?
Day zero,
Yes.
yes,
No, no,
is
that's
how I
fine. That's fine.
recall. Yeah.
And what about the big tech companies? Do they come? Are they like with the day zero companies, or do they come a bit later?
I think tech companies came at
Okay.
part of day one.
Yes.
You have that
And I'm
again.
guessing you would be targeting those
Day
companies
zero
given
was
your
mostly.
computer science background, or did you go all across and
Yeah.
spread the net wide?
No, I think somebody asked me, "Are you interested in consulting?" And I asked, "How is the work-life balance in consulting world?" And, and didn't seem very promising from a work-life balance point of view. So did not opt for that. Product management role, like I said, the client in Cognizant had kind of seeded this thought that hey, you'd be good for product management. And then when I spoke to seniors, I got some very interesting anecdotes about hey, what is product management? So all of that kind of made me interested in the role. So gave my best
Right.
for tech
Right. So
and
you were
tech
like
roles.
very focused, product management, tech, ideally, and maybe a bit here and there as backup. And do you
Yes,
think is that
yes.
true for most of your classmates, or because I remember, and maybe it's a sign of the times, but people were doing investment banking, consulting, marketing, everything. कि जहाँ पे भी लग जाए लग.
So I think I knew investment banking is not going to work for me because accounting was definitely not my forte, right? Anything to do with finances and all of that, I was struggling. So that was not my forte. Second thing is my dad worked in sales and marketing or is working in sales and marketing. So I've seen that life and that kind of environment where it's all target focused and, it felt like a pressure cooker in that role. So that never really excited me as much as
Right.
product
And a
management.
lot of traveling also in sales and marketing. Is that right? And in consulting.
I think traveling would have been a bonus because now I end up traveling and paying for
Right.
it by myself. So that would have been a bonus that I
Okay,
think I
I
missed.
thought maybe you were thinking कि I'll have to catch a bus daily and then it might. Okay, okay. So you're saying that summer placement you focus and where did you get placed in summers?
So summer also I
Flipkart.
interned
Okay.
with Flipkart. Yeah, I interned
Hmm.
in product management only. So it was almost a 2 month stint with stipend. I worked on this concept of dynamic
Okay.
creative optimization. So basically specced out how for Flipkart, they can show maybe ads or merchandising content in a dynamic way, customized and personalized for the end user. So I worked on that. Fast forward, I got an
Hmm.
offer from Flipkart itself,
So you
and
got a
that's how
PPO.
I joined
Is
Flipkart.
that right?
So it's not exactly a PPO because that year, actually, Flipkart had
Okay.
announced they are not hiring. But my internship was so good that they decided to call me back. So I had attended campus placements. I had an opportunity through the lateral process, but I kind of got the Flipkart option
Okay, okay.
offline
So
and went through.
technically not a PPO, but at least in my language, I think I'll classify it as you. PPO for me is something when
Yes,
you get
PPO.
an
Yes,
offer, when you get hired based on the work you did in your 2 months of
yes,
internship, rather than based on some two interviews that you
yes.
do in a placement process. Right, right. And
Right.
from what you
You're
were
right.
talking about, the
Yes.
dynamic, come again, dynamic
Dynamic
creative.
creative optimization. So creatives are basically the ads or
Hmm.
the posters that you kind of see, right? So dynamic creative optimization is where like we look at you, we're like, hey, what would Mix buy? And then put together
Right.
content that will get mixed to
So as a
peak and viral.
layman,
Yeah.
as I see it, that this is the industry
Hmm.
or the type of stuff that Amazon mastered. That's why Amazon is where Amazon is globally. They created this industry, right? That I'll give you,
Right.
I'll show you. If you have bought this, then you should also buy that kind of thing. So
Buy
you were
that.
working, you
Yeah.
created that for
Right.
Flipkart. Is that correct?
Okay, created that would be a big thing because my internship was only 2 months. So I had spec the concept for
Right.
dynamic creative optimization, and after that, yeah, had just handed over the spec for it.
So, Rinku, tell us
Right.
something about all the people who might be outside Flipkart and wondering what is Flipkart like inside? What is Flipkart? What's the culture there? What is the environment there? Kaisa hai organization? How's the organization like?
Okay. So just to iterate, I had worked in Flipkart like around 2.5 years back. So whatever I'm talking about is dated information. So back when I worked, Flipkart is full of very, very, very smart people. Everyone you meet there, you can just assume they're smarter than you. They definitely are. Second thing that I noticed about Flipkart is everybody is confident, right? And everybody has got conviction, and are very opinionated about what they think, right? And that's something that I learned from them to stand my ground, when I feel like things I'm not sure about things. And Flipkart is also fun. Everybody there were really fun. I remember the office parties, the hangouts. It was really nice. We had outings to Goa, Thailand, and also that was also really fun time.
Tell us like what is Flipkart like, and what is the future of Flipkart? Like I know that Walmart has acquired a majority stake in Flipkart, right? Like how is it Flipkart
Right.
doing? Is it able to compete with Amazon? Give us the core.
Yeah. So I think the core, can Flipkart, sustain this whole battle? I think they definitely can. Like I said, the people in Flipkart are very strong. They're very smart, very strategic, and aware of how the environment is evolving. Right. I think when I joined Flipkart, I was in fact told you're making a bad decision. Amazon is going to kill Flipkart. Flipkart, it's not going to exist. So why are you even accepting this offer? But then they sail through that, right? So I think the people there, the company is very resilient and it will be able to sustain this war. So don't see a concern there. Yeah, the people culture is really strong. I think the people who really power the Flipkart brand. Having said that, one more thing I want to highlight about Flipkart, which might be rare about other companies, the kind of opportunities that they give, right? So I had just joined the organization and out of college, barely 2 years of experience before that, and I was part of the grocery team and responsible for the growth and retention of grocery, and then went on to be part of the storefront team, owning the homepage or storefront experience, right? I think that kind of opportunity at that early in your career, I don't know if you will get, right? So Flipkart really pushes you to be your best and gives you the opportunities to show your best as. So
And
that's
is
something
most
I
of the
wanted to
Flipkart
highlight.
employees they're still based in Bangalore, right? Like it's a Bangalore heavy company.
Yes, they are.
So just to put
Yes,
this in
they are.
perspective, Rinku, you were in Flipkart for about 4 or 5 years, 2016 as an intern, and
Mhm.
then 17 to 21 as
Mhm.
a full time. And this period was after Flipkart had cleaned out the competitors by buying them out. Whether it was Mintra, whether it was Jabong, whether whoever it was, that happened before your
Mhm.
time. That let's just buy out the competition, so we are the only one
Right.
competing with Amazon at that time.
Mhm.
So my
Right.
question really, because we
Yeah.
were talking about the culture in the organization and there was a lot of
Mhm.
M&A happening. So I used to
Mhm.
be an M&A consultant back in the day. That's usually a big challenge for organizations who have grown through acquisitive strategies. So did you see that different people, different teams having a different work ethic or a cultural ethic?
Actually,
No.
not much.
Right.
I did not have much exposure
Right.
to that aspect
Right. So
of
basically,
Flipkart. Yeah.
when you saw those
As far as
people
I.
in the Flipkart after their
Mhm.
M&A phase, you saw them. Oh, these are Flipkart people. I'll give you an example.
I.
20 years ago, I worked in a company called Colgate, and Colgate, while it wasn't an acquisitive culture, there was one acquisition Colgate had done before I joined, which was buying Sibaka or Siba Gai,
Mhm.
which in the 90s.
Mhm.
Even for like 8 years after acquisition, people used to talk, oh, that's a Sibaka guy, that's a Colgate guy. While it was like just 10% were
Mhm.
Sibaka people, people still retained that identity.
Yeah.
He's like ex Sibaka.
Right. At least at the time that I was working in Flipkart, all these companies are kind of isolated. Like Myntra
Right.
had its own office. Myntra
Right.
could make its own decisions. Integration between Myntra, Flipkart were
Hmm.
very slow and very little. Same with eBay and all of that. I think Flipkart did study eBay model and all of that, but the co-working thing I did not
Okay.
come
Okay. So,
across
so
it
you're
too
saying that
much.
they were kept
Again, it could
separate.
have
They
been
You
just
hadn't
see,
even
that
been integrated.
look,
Flipkart.
the reason and the reason I'm negative about Flipkart is that if you we're just talking about the business here, is that Amazon makes money in America because of its cloud offering, right? Amazon Cloud. It doesn't make money on the actual product itself because
Right.
that's a very competitive, cutthroat business. And what has happened with Flipkart is that it has not innovated outside the product delivery and selling products on a website. And I don't think selling products on a website is a business where you can have more than 1 or 2% margin and you have huge expenses with 25-30% returns, right? I am not bullish on Flipkart. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Again, just the hopeful person speaking here, not really as an Flipkart employee. But I also look at it this way, right? There's a lot of advertisements that happen on Flipkart. The amount of traffic that Flipkart
Sure.
gets, crazy, right? So, and also, if you notice, Flipkart has introduced something like a
Yes.
white labeling. So you have brands selling
Mhm.
exclusively on Flipkart, and I think those things
Yes.
give huge margin. And also it's all about the numbers game, right? I think these days there's a lot of stress on revenue and all of that, but if is revenue all that matters, if you're looking at user base reach, they
Mhm.
have all of that, right? So, and also they had introduced
Mhm.
loyalty
Mhm.
programs, Flipkart coins, kind of
Mhm.
ensure there's good retention.
That's a,
And
that's
so I
a, that's a
think
very good
those
insight,
things are
Rinku,
going
because
for them.
Amazon, if you, I'd actually looked at Amazon's balance sheet and I had used, I think, ChatGPT to explain to me like how is Amazon doing. And if you look, Amazon it doesn't make money from selling products from its own warehouses. It makes money
Right.
from advertising,
Right.
like you said, which Flipkart has. It makes money from its computing infrastructure that it provides to others that Flipkart doesn't have. And Amazon makes money from third party people selling on the Flipkart platform. So if somebody else wants to sell something on Flipkart,
Right.
Amazon charges some money that, okay, I'm displaying your product on my platform. It makes money from that. It doesn't make money from white label because competition is too high. So I think
Right.
like the reason Flipkart sold 48% to Walmart is not public yet after 17 years means, and at least because it's not public, we don't know a lot about his P&L, but from what we know, it's still making losses. Like, I don't think the top management is able to sleep.
In the short and medium term, you can get VC funding and just keep pouring in and pouring in money, keep buying out your competitors or keep getting them out of business and making them unprofitable. And then at that point, and this is the oligopolist mentalities of the big tech that we've learned from the Silicon Valley startups, is when no one else is there, that's when you make the profits. And then right
Right.
now, if and we are a YouTube channel ourselves, right? If YouTube says I'm going to give you nothing, do we have an option? Yeah, not too many, right? Because there are only two or three options. But
Right.
imagine 20 years ago when YouTube started and there were like 20 competitors, and either they went out of business or they were bought. In fact, YouTube itself was bought by Google rather than being an organic.
So I think look, if I was doing corporate strategy for Flipkart, I'll tell them that a reasonable strategy for them is actually taking their business model global. Because see what has happened, very interesting, and I think this is a unique insight, that when I used to go from my home to San Francisco airport till 3 years ago, it used to cost me $25-$30 on Uber. And I used to ask the driver, Kecha, and most of these were Indian guys, how much are you getting? And he used to say that I'm getting $30. I said, well, I only paid you 25. Why are you getting 30? So that was the VC money that Uber was funneling to the drivers. Now, because Uber has established monopoly in the market, if I go from my home to San Francisco airport, it's $60. And when I ask the driver, how much are you getting? He says, I'm not getting anything. I'm only getting $22. So now more than 50% of the money is being kept by Uber because they've become a monopoly, right? What this does is that it allows someone
Right.
like Indian homegrown players to now come to the US, right? Now Ola can come to the US and tell their drivers that no, we'll, instead of you getting 40% of the money from Uber, we will start giving you 80% of the money, because all we're doing is just running a technology platform. And that will migrate a lot of drivers from Uber to Ola, or at least they can have two phones. Ola bhi hai, Uber bhi hai. And then when I'm getting a Ola ride, I choose a Ola ride because I make 80% of the money. And that changes the game. And what has happened with Amazon is that for every third party seller on Amazon, like my wife, she said that I'll try and sell, like she loves dog. She has a dog and she loves a dog. And she said, I want to sell some dog products on Amazon. So she started looking into it. And for her to sell a $20 dog product on Amazon, Amazon will keep $6. $6 to $7 will be kept by
Right.
Amazon because Amazon is a monopoly. Where else will she sell? Because that's where people go to buy. So when Flipkart came and said that, look, all we are providing is the technology platform. Instead of us keeping 30%, we'll only keep 10% from you. We'll only keep $2 out of $20. Then people like my wife would want to sell on Amazon or on Flipkart instead of Amazon. And that's what, so like Miglani was very correctly identifying that, look, people start making money when they become monopolists, right? YouTube is now a monopoly, Amazon's a
Mm.
monopoly, Uber is a monopoly. And then what we can do is homegrown players in India can then say that, look, because your profit is my opportunity, right? Flipkart has to say Amazon's profit is my opportunity. Ola needs to say Uber's profit is my opportunity. And Indians are a big segment in the US. You first start with marketing to the Indian segment and then you grow from there. I think.
Just 2 cents here, at least from what I felt when I was working in Flipkart, is there is also a cultural aspect to how e-commerce work, right? Like Flipkart, to crack the market, had to introduce cash on delivery. Now they're available in all regional languages and so on, right? So I think there is this cultural nuance which needs to be cracked if you are going to be available in a new region. And I think today Flipkart is really strong in their forte of understanding the Indian customers. They're way more popular in tier two cities and so on. While it's easy to say, hey, we'll expand to a new region, the thought of how can we, translate the local shopping behavior into a digital platform is something I think would be really challenging, and maybe the local players would understand that better than an international player trying to enter that market. Again,
No, I think
just my
that's a
two
very
cents
very valid
based
point to
on
raise,
what I
Rinko.
know.
That's a very valid point that the buying patterns in India, the culture in India is so much different. Yeah.
So if you take China for example, they have a tendency of group purchases, and they also like to like bargain. So their online shopping kind of
China
shows that
online shopping has
behavior
bargaining
patterns.
also.
Like, yeah, I've heard about it where you can like say, hey, I'm gonna give only this, and you can chat with the seller and then
Nice.
make a purchase. So if you
Hmm.
open AliExpress and all, some of the items, if you're buying in wholesale, the
Hmm.
prices are in ranges. You can message the seller and
Hmm.
then you can talk and buy. I think in India, many people have tried these things that have worked for China, and it's not
Hmm.
really picked up, right? So yeah, so entering a new region is going to be a challenge. You'll have to do your research, and you'll have to figure out what
See,
works in that
I personally classify
region
companies
and
in
how
two
can you translate
categories.
it.
Are they going to beat the index? Are they going to not be able to beat the index? So for
Mm-hmm.
me, that is not a company
Right.
which can beat the index. And the index is like, say, the Nifty, right? The top 50 companies in India, 50. And I think if
Mm-hmm.
somebody had 10 lakhs to invest, I would tell them, like, you have an opportunity to invest in Flipkart, or have
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity to invest in Nifty 50. I'll say, "Nahi, put your money in Nifty 50, don't put it in Flipkart." That's my
Yeah, just that I've seen Flipkart. Like I said, my experience was, hey, why are you even accepting Flipkart? They're gonna sink this year. Amazon is gonna eat them up. That's the
hmm.
kind of environment in which I joined,
What's the culture
and
inside? Is the
I've
culture
seen
inside
them.
of Trump fight, fight, fight? Or is the culture inside of Kamala Harris, which is a word soup? So, like, what is the culture inside Flipkart? Like, they understand this tension too, right? Like, Amazon is gonna eat me, or why am I not profitable yet? So,
Yeah,
what is the culture inside? Right?
they're very aware.
Yes, and
They're
is it
very aware. They're very aware
hmm,
of the
hmm.
realities in
And is it
market.
a culture of fight
Yeah.
to figure out a solution?
So, like I said, yes, yes, and not just fight. I think they also think for the long term, right? For example, one of the behaviors that many e-commerce firms were quick to introduce is in add to cart. They give you a discount if you add some item and then you
Yes.
don't buy. After 2 days later, they'd be like, "Hey, we're
Hmm,
now giving you extra 10% discount."
hmm.
Flipkart did not do that because they were clear that's not a sustainable
Yeah, and they were
behavior for
smart because
shoppers,
sometimes I
right?
will add
Because then
something to the
every other
cart and not
person,
buy and wait
yeah,
for a discount coupon to show up.
No,
right,
absolutely. And I still remember those
right,
times, and I've heard from friends and family because word spreads like wildfire. Ek ko aise mila, then you're like,
right.
okay, this is the only way to shop. Everyone was just adding to the cart, going out, getting a discount, coming back, buying the same thing.
Coming back. Yeah. So Flipkart did not do that because they have the long term thinking right, I believe. So they'll survive. I'm being positive.
So
So
Rinku,
yeah,
you were
let's
saying
hope
you
for the
joined in
best.
this time when Amazon had
Mhm.
come in, and there was rumors that Amazon is big globally, and
Mhm.
rightfully so. they have they are the number one in pretty much every country they have gone in. And but there is this Flipkart here who
Mm-hmm.
for the last 10 years understands the Indian market better than Amazon right now does.
Mm-hmm.
If I were Amazon at that time, I
Mm-hmm.
would just poach half of Flipkart's
Mm-hmm.
senior team and say, come, I will give you 10% extra or whatever, 50% extra salary, just work for me. I'm giving you MNC type of culture and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Did that happen at all? Did you hear of it,
Mm-hmm.
see any of it?
I think I was way too junior to, make
Hmm.
sense of it. But I think if I do go to LinkedIn now and check, hey, are there alumni from Flipkart and Amazon? It would say definitely a lot of
Right.
people are working there. I had few friends intern there, right? And I think Amazon has this value of frugality. So the deeper culture there was, hey, let's see what we can reuse from what we've already
Hmm.
built. I think that's it, and build. So maybe that adaptability wasn't as fast as what Flipkart is doing, because Flipkart is doing
Hmm.
more of a first principle thinking where it's like, hey, this is the Indian customer. They're not adopting e-com. How do I go about it? And then we're building the capabilities from that point of view versus, hey, I have a set of capabilities. Now how do I, make them work for the Indian market? I think
Right,
that's where
right. And
Flipkart
and
had
you
the
were talking about
advantage.
cash on delivery. Did Flipkart invent that in India in shopping, or were there other people doing it for that?
As far as I know, Flipkart was the first to introduce cash on
Was it
delivery.
before you joined or
And
around the time when you were there?
that I think before I joined, because I remember sitting in Cognizant, ordering on Flipkart, and then you wait for the delivery person and paying for it. So,
Now I want to move on
uh-huh.
to the more interesting part of your journey,
Mm-hmm.
and which is the last 3 years or so at Microsoft
Mm-hmm.
as a product
Mm-hmm.
manager. What I want to understand from you is, like, our core market is other people who are in jobs just like you, right? Product manager jobs. Ki, how do you move ahead? Or people who want to get a product manager job. What is life like inside Microsoft? What do you do whole day? Mane, how many hours are you sending emails? Like, out of 8 hours,
Mm-hmm.
6 hours is emails, 2 hours is real work, or is it 6 hours of real work and 2 hours of email?
Right.
So, what is the culture inside Microsoft? What is this
Right.
product management job? What exactly is your job? Are you like trying to improve the features of Windows? So, and then we also want to understand that as India goes from a $4 trillion economy to a $55 trillion economy in the next 40 years, there'll be huge growth. What will it take to have Indian companies like Microsoft, like, Microsoft, and these are all American companies, right? Like, where do you see an opportunity for entrepreneurs in India to
Mm-hmm.
do better? So, let us start with the simpler questions. What, just the way
Mm-hmm.
people did not know how to get into IIM, what is life like at IIM, right? Now there's much more awareness about that because there are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
channels talking about IIM, right? But I don't know of any channel talking
Right.
about how to get into Microsoft, what is life like inside Microsoft, right? Like, just replace IIM with Microsoft and now tell us
Mm-hmm.
how to get into Microsoft and what is life like at
Mhm.
Microsoft.
Okay. So first, I'm going to talk about how I got my interview call, right? And I think this is a good lesson of why networking is very important. So I had attended Grace Hopper convention, and all the tech companies had different stalls. There was Google, Microsoft, and so on. And Microsoft was the only company which had like a senior leader present in their stall, right? So I walk up to him and I actually, start talking, and then I asked him directly, "Is Microsoft a retirement company?" That's what I hear the talks, because work happens really slow. You release something once every few years. Is it true? And I think the way he answered it is what really won me over. First of all, he did not get defensive, or he did not treat me like, what is this newbie telling me kind of attitude. Instead, he was like, no, that's not the case anymore. That might have been true like a year or two back. But hey, here's how, our product works now. And this is the cadence at which we're releasing. I think the humility with which he answered, the amount of knowledge that he had, I think I had huge respect for him after that meeting. And he in turn asked me a bunch of questions, and then he said, hey, why don't you leave your resume with us? So I left my resume with him, and he called me for an interview that year. And that year I said, hey, I'm quite happy with where I am with Flipkart. I'm not planning to give an interview. He was respectful of it. And the super surprising thing is, next year he remembered again when they had a hiring drive. Now that was during the lockdown where we've not traveled, and I thought, hey, I wanted a change, so I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I tried Microsoft, and it was a very smooth, well organized interview process. So there was a day you had to give like 4 interviews, and the interview is one is on product thinking. There's a round on analytical thinking. Are you able to think on behalf of your customers, the business aspects of it, and then there is a bar raiser round where they check about your cultural fit, right? So that's how it works. Now, preparing for the interview, there were 3 things that I had done, because I knew it was Microsoft was not giving any other interview, so it was was very easy for me to focus. There were three things that I did. One was read this book called How to Crack PM Interviews. It really covers the basics of, hey, what is PMing? Because if you ask me, PMing is still very ambiguous. The role is very different in different organizations. So this book talks about, hey, what do PMs do in Microsoft, right? And what do PMs do in Amazon, and so on, right? And it gives you like a basic set of questions to prepare. So I would prepare those questions. There were a few other friends who were preparing with me, so we would, give mock interviews to each other. It would start with some basic questions like, tell me about yourself, and then we would give feedback to each other. Second book that really helped is this book called Decode and Conquer, right? So that has a set of case studies, which again with solutions in it, but you can actually look at, hey, I think I can do better than the solution and try to come up with a unique perspective. That workbook is like really good for it. So these were two books cover to cover that I had read and prepared. Third thing that I had done is actually Google. So there are so good thing about these corporates is their interview processes are standardized, right? Questions pretty much fall in the same patterns. So if you can just Google and understand people's interview experience, and if you read like maybe 10, 15 interviews, you pretty much get an idea of 80% of the questions that's going to come. So you look at them, you practice them, you find if they have already listed answers, you find like what could be better with those answers, and then you try to do better. I think these really helped with my interview.
I'm amazed you said I Googled for my Microsoft interview. I thought you would now say I Binged it.
No, no, no. I think one thing is being aware of where our product stands and
Hmm.
having the drive to improve.
Okay,
That's
I'm
something
actually
that
going to go
Microsoft
on a
has.
very
Yeah,
short digression. Is do you see with OpenAI and
sure.
Microsoft, what do you see the future of search or AI search now, not just a web search? Do you see Microsoft has
Yeah, let's call the
closed the
classical
gap? Do
term.
you see them leading very
Yeah.
soon on that?
What's more important, what I think we all see in every conversation that Microsoft is having, is Microsoft wants to lead the AI wave, right? Microsoft did not make it through the phone waves, and we lost the tablets and all of those mobile devices kind of wave. Then even in the OS one, the Android, we lost to that. So there are a bunch of these waves which could have been Microsoft's but lost due to whatever reasons. I think with AI, there's a very strong drive to lead the way and not fall under it, right? So with that perspective, I think there is a lot of innovations that they are trying out, right? So usually we hear, hey, it's a big company, they're going to be slow to try things and make mistakes and all. But actually, I'm seeing the opposite, very open to experiments, very open to trying out new things. And I think that growth mindset that they're showing will really help, with this battle, and the effort that they're putting into ensuring, they're on the cutting edge, trying everything innovative and stepping out of the comfort
And
zones
is that
seems like
only in
really.
India, Rinku, or you would have exposure to the global teams? Is there a change globally, or is there like some local
Right.
initiatives that the Indian teams are doing?
It's a global effort, all round, right? It's both bottoms up, top down. Everywhere you're seeing this change, right? It's like, hey, is there a smarter way to get this thing done? Like traditionally, we would have been like, hey, if I just change this button color, would that help? Kind of a thought, right? I'm just giving as an example. But now it's no longer like that. It's like, hey, 6 months, 1 year down the line, what would a compete come up with kind of solution, right? Let's try to look at the future and then see what's a smarter way to achieve that. And I think those are some of those very key change in thinking and approach to the way AI is being handled that will
Very
really
good
help.
answer, Rinku. So, can you make it real for our audience? Make it real. I lost on the mobile operating system way with Android. I lost out on the internet search engine way with Google. I lost out on the mobile phone way with iPhone. Microsoft has just lost so much that I see that this new Microsoft doesn't want to lose the AI wave, and it is so interesting that AI wave seems to be
Right.
larger than all the other waves combined, right? Because we are literally manufacturing intelligence now. So
Right.
can you talk about something that's already out there in the
Right.
public, like or anything that you can think to make it more real?
Yeah. So something as simple
Mhm.
as your word, right? Until like 6 months back, every spec that I had to write it from scratch, every single word. Today, I open and I just open Copilot on the side and I tell it, hey, you're a product manager in Microsoft. You are building XYZ. You are doing so and so, and now write a spec on it. and it would write, and it would be like 80% on point, because it's looking at what others in the company are talking about on the topic, what are the companies doing in the topic, what have I already written somewhere about this topic. It puts all of that together and creates
Wonderful.
the document, right? Now this kind of innovation, I don't think 6 months back or even a year back was something that we were thinking
I didn't even
is
know
even
this was even
possible,
possible
wildly
today.
possible,
I didn't know that
right?
I could open Microsoft Word, I could open a
Today
Copilot and say, "You're a product manager at Microsoft, write a product spec on a feature," and it will actually write a good product spec.
it will write a spec for you. You can, it all depends on how you give the prompts for it. So I have, like, my friends in other firms and all, it's being slowly rolled out to them, and we have interesting conversations on what kind of prompts can be used to get more productive at work, and I think that's really really helpful. And all of that happened sort of overnight, I would say. It was like magic. We didn't have it, and then one fine day we have it.
Wow, that's great. Your senior management at Microsoft should know that you just advertised Microsoft Word has a good co-pilot to a large audience for this show, which is in Silicon Valley. And since most of us, like, we remember Microsoft as not this Microsoft, as not this innovative, coming up with new features. So you're doing great service
Right.
to an employer right now. So, and very well explained how to prepare, how to first even get an interview call at Microsoft. I think that was just so well explained. And you talked about Grace, the scientist Grace Hopper
Yeah, yeah,
Convention. Do you want to tell people about Grace
yeah.
Hopper Convention, what this is, and how do people even go to this convention?
So Grace Hopper Convention is for women in tech. So we have, in the conference, we'll have a lot of talks from the industry leaders who've been in the industry for like 15, 20 years in tech, and how they manage, and giving their thoughts about problem solving, anything, everything, right? So they present case studies and so on. So it's a great exposure. I think it goes along with the feeling that, hey, you sometimes think you're only one, and when you go to these conferences, you notice there's collectively a lot of you going through the same journey, and you learn from it, right? And in addition to having these talks and everything, they also have stalls from these tech companies. They talk about the work that they do, and like I said, you can just go strike a conversation with the leaders there.
So only 1% of our audience can get into IEMs. That's the raw truth of it. 99% of audiences goes to BA or like BSc. Or can these
Mhm.
people also attend the Grace Hopper Convention?
So I'm not sure. Like, the opportunity I have received for attending Grace Hopper has been usually through the organization. Gotten like Cognizant, do you want to sign up? Flipkart, do you want to sign up? And as well as I've seen it in Microsoft. So through the corporate is how I've been to it. I'm not sure if you can individually sign up for it. That's something we should definitely check.
So Rinku, Grace Hopper Convention is all about women in
And
tech, right?
this was right.
It's all about women in tech. And you were mentioning now, for all the
Right.
great job that your the person at the Microsoft stall did to attract you to the company, now I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering that Microsoft could not
Mm-hmm.
get a senior woman manager to be on the stall at Grace Hopper. Is that something to read into the gender diversity
No.
within Microsoft?
No, no, no. Gender diversity is amazing in Microsoft. My previous team was like all women. My skip manager was a woman. My manager was a woman. My peer group had mostly women. I think we did have men, but for a change, it was just
Hmm.
30% of the team were men. And then we had some reorgs, and my current team has almost 50% women. So
So what are the odds that
I've
the
never,
person
this thought never occurred to me
What
that
are the odds
one.
that the person who
Uh-huh.
goes on the stall at the Grace Hopper convention is part of the 30% men and not part of the 70% women in the team? That's where I'm just
I mean, again, it
yes.
changes from teams to team. I'm
Hmm.
talking about my perspective after joining Microsoft. This has been what I've observed. I've not seen, like, I've seen a lot
Hmm.
of teams being led by women in Microsoft. I've not had that feeling that, hey, where are the women in this or anything as such. It's got good diversity mix, and I don't think that thought ever occurred to me. Why is there no
Yes.
women here or anything like that? But at least within
And
the
see,
organization, I'm
see,
not seeing.
so I've been into inclusion and diversity funding as a VC for a number of years, and for me, one of the big tests, and we had a guest recently, a few episodes ago, who worked for the Tatas, and she was telling us that Tatas have a lot of
Mhm.
gender diversity, and my question to her at that time was, I don't see any women in the Tata Sons board who are women. So, I mean, all that is fine, but is there a
Yeah.
glass ceiling there? And similarly, I'm asking you the question: is why could Microsoft get
I think
a
the
woman to
CEO's role
manage the
is,
stall
I
at a
mean,
Grace?
maybe the women were attending the session, so the men took care of it.
That's a very good answer. Yeah. Yeah. They were actually the participants.
Yeah,
Yes.
makes sense,
Yes.
right?
Very good. So, is that a career opportunity, like a career conference, or is it like just learn and network.
It's what you it's based on the goal with which you attend the sessions, right? For me, it was, I attended for the talks because Flipkart at that point in time in my team, I was the only women, and there were very few women that I knew in Flipkart. So it was interesting for me to see like other leaders there present there and talk about it. And I was just curious, hey, how do the other tech companies work? What's the process there? So it is more from that thought that I attended the sessions from a curiosity point. But yeah, if you are looking at networking, they do have high tea sessions
Right.
and so on, so you can meet.
So we were talking about that you got into Microsoft and you've been there for about 3 years, and you got in Microsoft during the pandemic. What made you change your mind that move from Flipkart? Because if I remember right, post pandemic, online shopping got a new life of its own.
Right, right. Yeah. So there was definitely some tailwinds that improved the e-commerce revenue and so on. But I think for me, it was always already 4 years at Flipkart, and I just wanted to try a new experience. And like I said, at Flipkart, I was just based out of Bangalore. With Microsoft, there was that possibility that you could later travel to the US or Redmond, and much more international exposure, which is kind of what pulled me towards the Microsoft experience, and I
Got it.
wanted.
So now, since we were talking about the culture at Flipkart, what are the
Mhm.
compare and contrast between the two? What's similar between a Microsoft job and a Flipkart job, and what's different?
Okay, so at Microsoft, I would say when it comes to culture, there's a much more mature thinking or a way to it, because probably it's been there for so many years and they figured out what works, what doesn't work, right? And definitely they are respectful of your work life balance and your availability, you prioritizing your work, family over work. Whereas in Flipkart, I think it had that startup kind of culture where people were, all fired up to achieve, whatever was their next target. It was a much more competitive and aggressive culture when compared to Microsoft, because I think they saw a lot of room for growth in the e-commerce sector. And of course, when you talk about from a cultural guideline or a process perspective, Flipkart was still figuring things out, right? Whereas Microsoft would have already done few experiments and they would be sure that, hey, this is a new
And do you
process,
see
it
that as
works,
good or
and so
bad?
on. So I
Do you
think
see
that
that
that was
necessarily
a.
bad? Because sometimes when people are figuring things out, they are nimble and they can navigate the market, like you were saying
Mhm,
with Flipkart, because unlike Amazon,
mhm,
they were
right.
more able to be part of
Mhm,
the Indian thing than have set systems. Do you see that as possible
mhm,
hindrance with a global behemoths like Microsoft in navigating the Indian consumer or
mhm.
customer in whatever product they are having?
I think there is good and bad for it, but when it comes to culture, having a little bit of stability really helps. Like if your work-life balance is good unless there's something really business critical, right? You get that your mental health is much better off, and you're able to focus better on at work, and your work hours are only this much, so you tend to work more efficiently and all of that. So I think when it comes to culture, having a mature approach and being quicker to adapt things that make your employees more effective is
Yeah.
what really helps.
Rinku, can I ask,
Yeah,
are you doing
so
a similar job
unlike
at
in the
Microsoft
Microsoft.
that you were doing? From what I understood at Flipkart, you were doing more the store experience, the for the customer and how the customer gets the CX
Hmm,
part.
hmm.
But what is it
Right.
similar to what you're doing at Microsoft?
It is sort of started in a similar way, but is now kind of diverged from that. So, my first stint of the project that I had in Microsoft was on modernizing the
Hmm.
legacy experience in Windows. So, just one quick example is if you right click and on any file in your Windows and there's an open with dialog box. So, how do we modernize that, make it much more exciting for people to be on Windows and not treat it like a system from the past, right? So that's kind of thing that I was working on. After that, I worked on this concept of boot to cloud, right, which is now available in the market. So basically, that concept was very interesting. You turn on your PC and you connect to the cloud, right? In its ideal state, you wouldn't even need an OS in your local
Hmm.
PC. It's all just there in the cloud, right? So that's how it works. And then currently, I'm working on developer experience in Visual Studio. So we're trying to see how can we make it easier for people to code on Windows or code for Windows, get more apps for Windows, so that it's harder
So
for
finally,
them to
finally, Windows is getting
stay
into
locked into
building
the.
that ecosystem that they couldn't do during the Apple and Android wars.
Yeah, they're
Finally,
trying.
good, good. And
They're getting
you
there.
mentioned about cloud laptops or cloud device. Is that the next big thing?
No, I think cloud is over. Like, as in, I'm not saying cloud
Hmm.
thing. The hype around cloud is done with. I think AI
Right.
is the next wave.
So you're
Like
saying
we're
that
looking at.
so for the
So,
last 5 years, it's been like netbooks and Chromebooks, which were the cloud devices, right? So you're saying now it's
yeah,
AI first
yeah,
devices.
cloud device. So, yeah, first. So you already have the announcement. There's Copilot plus PCs. There's been announced. Apple has announced OS integrated with AI.
So there's one thing which is still I'm just thinking about. I don't think I understand product
Mm-hmm.
management as well as, obviously not as well as you, but even as
Mm-hmm.
well as I should. So you were talking about these books that you read, how to crack the interviews. But firstly, I won't read those books because I'm not looking for a PM job. Maybe I should in my spare time.
Right.
But what? How would you explain to me or and to our viewers what does a product manager actually do? Just to add one more thing, for me, what you are doing at Microsoft, like you explained, is very different from what you are doing at Flipkart. Is
Mm-hmm.
very different from what
Mm-hmm.
someone else in another company who's also called a product manager does. To me, at least to me as an outsider.
So I think if we take the context in which I work, right, it's definitely different. Like a year and a half or 2 years ago, I was in e-commerce, and then I was working on Windows, the operating system. Today, I'm working with the developer community. Its
Hmm.
context keeps changing. However, as a product manager, there are a set of competencies and skills that you're supposed to have, and they remain the same across all these roles that I am doing. Right. What I mean by that is you have this thing called product thinking, right? Which is your ability to break down a big problem statement into smaller units that you can solve for, right? Where you gather the requirements and the actual needs of your customer, right? That is one such competence. Another competency is problem solving. Okay, you have all the problems sorted out now, but what is the answer for those? How do we solve it, right? How can we keep business and the customers happy? Meet that middle ground, right? Another set of skill that you need is also stakeholder management, because once you have your solution in place, you need to pitch that in. You need to have the buy-in from your engineers to actually develop it, from the designers to give you an idea of how it will look in reality, with your business stakeholders so that it makes business sense, with your own leaders so that they know you're thinking right, and so on, right? So there is stakeholder management. Fourth is also leadership. So when you start off as a PM, there's a very high chance you're an IC, and you need to influence decision making even though you're not in a position of authority. What I mean by that is today I don't have anyone reporting to me, right? But then I should still be able to talk to an engineer and make them understand, hey, why this is important, and get them to do that work. So stakeholder management, leadership, communication, these are like the competencies for product management that is common across, and I think they endure irrespective of the context that you're working. So you could be in e-commerce, you could be deep in tech, but as a product manager, these are the competencies that you definitely
Thank
should.
you, Rinku. I think I understood more in the last
Um,
4 minutes than I have understood in the last 10 years. One small question or doubt that I have. So,
mhm,
how do you define a product in a company? Is
mhm.
that also very different, or are there
Sure.
some standard rules?
This is a very interesting question because I think, remember, I told you I was very low on awareness. Like, I did not know what's product management. I thought it's the
Hmm.
TV that you sell on Flipkart, it's the soap and everything that is sold on Flipkart, our product. And product managers basically decide what needs to be sold and at how much or something like that. That's what I thought it meant, right? And that's when I met a senior of mine, and I at IIM Bangalore, and I was like, okay, you know what, I'm interested in product management, but what is this product? Is this what they mean by product? And he said, no, that's not what they mean by product. What they mean by product for a company like Flipkart is the value that they deliver. And in case of Flipkart app, the value that they deliver could even be as simple as a
Okay.
search bar that they have, right? Helping people find what they need and making it easier for them. That's the value that they give, and that is the product that you're talking about. And that's what really changed my perspective about product management. It is not about, the big fancy things, but it's about what value are you delivering to your customers, to the business. And it could be as simple as a small add to cart button, or it could be a search bar, it could be the entire app, it could be anything, but
So
it's what delivers
In a
value to the
Flipkart or
customers, and
maybe
that's what
other
matters.
e-commerce, just to
Mhm.
generalize, so add to cart button
Mhm.
could be a product. That is like the most wow moment I've had.
Yes.
And there's a person whose KPI, who's
Yes.
like job 9 to 5, and before and after that for
Mhm.
365 24/7 is
Mhm.
how do I improve that add to cart
Yes.
button? How do I make more people add?
Yes, and more people click on add to cart, more purchases on
Yes.
Flipkart, and more revenue, right? So it could be as simple as that. While the solution, so the problems And how to figure it out is, I think, the most exciting part about product
Hmm.
management. The solution could be simple, right? I just make a brighter button, I just make a sticky button that no matter where you scroll on the page, you have an add to cart and so on. Solution could be like simple, but I think figuring out the problem statement, what are the issues your customers facing, the business is having, and so on, and then narrowing it down is where the
So,
real art.
so does that then, if I were to just rephrase it, a product manager is someone who is
Mm-hmm.
improving the CX or customer experience on any particular feature. It
Mm-hmm.
might be through a CI or
Mm-hmm.
interface function, or it could be something else,
Mm-hmm.
but it's to improve
Right.
something on the experience.
Yeah, you hit it right. It's just that experience is again one aspect of it. The way I would look at it as a product manager, at least from my experience, is someone who's looking at
Hmm.
optimizing for customer needs, business value, while looking at, how can tech enable that. So how can tech enable and optimize for customer needs and business value?
Got
That's
it.
kind of how we are looking at, and you figure out the sweet
Got
spot and
Got it. So more than 2 decades
execute
ago,
on
when
those.
I came out of IIM, I also got
Mhm.
into. I was a product manager for many years, but that was in the
Mhm.
old economy, as one
Mhm.
might say it. And I was actually managing products like toothbrushes, like toothpaste. I was managing those products for the entire country. But the commonality that
Right.
I understand from what you're saying, so it's about a customer value. And for the company I used to work for, it
Right.
was in the FMCG industry. The value you're providing is the toothpaste. It's a real product. But in the
Right.
internet economy, or
Right.
whether it's e-commerce or something else, the value you're providing is, it may not be a fungible, it may not be an actual physical product, tangible
Tangible.
product, but
Yeah.
being able to buy
Right.
is the product. So
Right.
Flipkart's being able to buy more
Right.
products from their manufacturers is the product, but therefore the manufacturers, the product manager would
Right.
actually be managing the product. Is that right?
Right. Yes, yes. So you perfectly nailed it. The product could be tangible, it could be something in the cloud, it could be something you cannot see. What really matters as a PM is, do you have those transferable skills that I was talking about? Are you able to, irrespective of the context, apply those and make drive the best value for your customer
So
and
now,
business?
tell
That's
me
what
about
really
the
matters.
transferable skills that, and I'm sure there are some people watching this who want to either make their mark in product management, are thinking about it, or maybe they're already started their journey. So, with your experience with the last 7, 8, 10 years, what are those transferable skills that make a good product manager?
Right. So first thing, like mentioned, is product thinking.
Hmm.
Product thinking is the ability to take a complex problem and break it down into smaller, solvable unit. Right. So it could be something. A big problem could be, what? Suddenly the conversion in my app dropped. Nobody is buying thing. Right. And if you make use of all those tools that are available in Decode and Conquer, or just by yourself, you can just break this down into smaller units. So you look at, hey, what causes conversion, right? It's when people buy, and for people to buy, they do add to carts, they have to be on Flipkart. So you kind of figure out what are the different levers of conversion, and then you kind of narrow down to what caused that conversion drop, right? So that kind of is part of product. Then comes problem solving. Like once you narrow down and identify why conversion dropped, then you kind of figure out what is the best solution for it, right? Now this solution, it would be great if it builds on top of existing solution, or should you build something entirely new? All of those parts need to be figured out. So that's problem solving for you, right? Next comes your stakeholder management skills. Like I said, once you come up with a solution, it's not like it magically happens. You have to sell it to your engineers, to the design team, to your data team, your leaders in the organization, your business counterparts, and so on, right? Your customers, everyone needs to buy into your solution, because once you release and then you find out it's not going to work, it's not what your customers want, you're going to be in big trouble. So that's kind of stakeholder management, and figuring out what your customer needs and everything is very important. Next comes your leadership skill, right? So influencing without authority is like a big need as part of this. Like I said, everybody starts their career in product management as an IC, right? There are going to be moments where, even though you've just newly joined the company, you have to stand your ground and say like, hey, I believe this is the right answer. And an engineer who doesn't even report to you has to take you for your word and get that work done, right? So having that conviction and being able to influence without authority is very, very important. So I think these are the four fundamental skills that you competency and skill that you need to have, irrespective of what the product is.
I mean,
Right.
this influencing without authority is, I think, very tricky. And
Right.
it's how do you get that? I mean, I've been in roles, and I've been in
Mhm.
roles where authority just overrides everything.
Everything.
Um,
Right.
yeah, how do you influence without authority?
So, as someone who just joined the organization when you just starting your career, it was not easy. It is very difficult in the sense that you try talking to someone, they're clearly not motivated to work on your product. So then you kind of end up escalating it and then putting pressure on that person to get it done. That's
Hmm.
how it kind of started. But over
Yes.
time, you realize there are much more efficient way to get do that than escalating every single thing, right? And I think a big part of that step is creating empathy. Clearly, you're
Okay.
trying to solve a problem that's good for the company. The other person is also trying to solve a problem that is good for the company, and you have a common ground there. Now, the question is, hey, what's that problem, and what can I do to solve for it? So, if
Hmm.
you can talk to the other person and convince them that this is the problem statement, this is why it's very important, here's why you need to prioritize and work on this, I think it works. Like 8 out of 10 times it works. You don't really need to
Hmm.
escalate and do all of those, right? So creating
So,
empathy is what has worked for me.
on a daily level, how do people do it? Whether you or other colleagues and ex-colleagues. I mean, is it like, let's go to the cafe, I'll buy you a coffee, and then I'll try to convince you, or is it like I'll make a presentation or a pitch, and then I'll try to convince you by email, or is it some other third way?
I think again it depends on the context, right? If somebody is more like a peer for me and I want to get something done, then yeah, sure. Like I can give you a treat if you can get this done. Works. But if someone is not a peer, and let's say I want to pitch an idea to someone who's way more senior than me, way more knowledgeable than me, then I think going prepared really helps. Your homework shows, and I think that is just half the battle won, right? And if it is someone who is way more junior than you, I think the empathetic approach really helps, where you explain to them the motivation behind the work that needs to be done. And I think when you explain that, then they also get fired up and it's a win-win situation.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so I think I've quite understood this. One thing that I'm getting a sense is, like you said, no one's reporting to me. All these other people, they are in different teams, and you've got
Yeah.
dotted line
Mhm.
influencing powers over them. Is it
Mhm.
a lonely job being a product manager?
Actually, it's not. It's not because, first of all, I think within product managers itself, you do tend to discuss, you do a lot of peer reviews and so on, right? It's like I said, when you do stakeholder management, it's not just people in your area of work that you do alone. You pitch it to your teammates and so on. So, product management community itself is a very strong community within Microsoft, within your team, and so on. So, it's not a lonely job at all. First thing. Second thing is, once you look into your product itself, the entire squad. So when I say squad, it's usually like 4 to 5 team members who, teams, right? Like your product, engineering, design, data, and so on, right? All of you work together. So squad becomes actually very strong when they start working together, and you tend to have brainstorming sessions, problem solving together, and so on. So it's not really a lonely job. But I think where it really does affect is when an engineer has a tangible output, the code, right? And then you press the button works. You have a tangible output. You have a designer, they go create a Figma file. Like I go ask them, hey, we discussed this. Where's the output? There is a Figma file. But I think sometimes as product managers, when somebody asks me, hey, what work did you do? There might not be a tangible output to show, because a lot of that work could have been just meeting people, getting the different inputs,
Hmm.
processing that, thinking deeper on it, right? And especially when you first join the product management, that can be a little bit of a shocker for you, because you're like, I feel like I did work. I spent 10 hours on this, but what's there to show for that 10 hours, right? So I think I've noticed that kind of a blip happens for when you join product management. But I guess eventually you understand, that product management is important. You tend to keep the ship together and so on. So it works.
So, Rinku, if there is no tangible output, how does a
Mhm.
product manager get appraised at the end of the year or quarter, whether you did a
Okay.
good job or not?
Right. So tangible outputs, I meant like in the short run. In the long run, of course, when your product hits the market, it's literally feels on others' behalf. But when you hear people explaining how they felt like they had their baby, that's kind of how it feels when you have your market hit the
Right.
have your
Right.
product hit the market and you hear the feedback about it, right?
Yes.
Now, impact for a product manager, how it's measured is in terms of the KRs that they signed up, as part of the role that they take up, right? So in my case, like I said, I work with the developer community. So my KRs would be, hey, how can we get more developers to, adopt our features, or, how can we make developers, or increase developer delight in the features that we use and so on, right? These are some of the KRs that we sign up for. And
Right.
then at the end of 6 months or at the end of 1 year, you look at, hey, what have you done to improve these initiatives?
Hmm.
And then you are evaluated based on that. Actually, that's like my favorite time of the year. That's when I really understand how I've utilized my time at work.
But do you know how you're doing versus these KRs through the year? Are they tracked regularly, or is it like a
Yes.
surprise after 12 months?
No. So again, it depends on the context. For an organization like Flipkart, tracking is very, very important, right? Because every click is potential revenue that is there. So tracking is much more real time there. At Microsoft, the scale at which we work, it's not possible to even collect and store that much amount of data. So the time periods are a little, the frequency of refresh, I would say, is way lesser when compared to Flipkart. But you can, right? And again, it depends. If you want the information, it's available.
Right. No, very interesting. To be honest, I didn't know a lot of these things till
Okay.
about 15 minutes ago. So if I were to become a hypothetically, or any of our viewers,
Mhm.
product manager, what's the career path? Is it just like, okay, today you're doing your product is this one buy button.
Mhm.
After that, it will be the whole page. After that, it will be this, and then you'll have five people reporting into you. And then after that, 10 years later, you'll have five people reporting into you who'll each have five people reporting into them, or five different products, or is it something different?
So first of all, if you
Hmm.
take the who's who of this world today, they all started as product managers. So when I'm talking about who's who, I'm talking about Bill Gates, I'm talking about Elon Musk, Sundar Pichai. They all started as product managers, right?
Okay.
So as product managers, when I first started off, also a leader told me, hey, it's very important that you have a good product portfolio, right? So if you're a model for a show, you would have a portfolio of photos to show the awesome work that you did, right? Similarly, as a product manager, it's important that you build an amazing product portfolio, right? So in my case, it starts with my work with Flipkart and Microsoft and so on. So that's how it works. Now, when you start off as a junior in an organization, similar to what you said, you probably given a well-defined problem statement, and the focus is more on, hey, can you problem solve it? Can you get it done? And then as you go higher up the ladder, the problem statements tend to become much more ambiguous, right? The KRs that you sign up for are much more challenging as you go up the ladder.
Hmm.
And also, it depends on the path that you choose. There are folks who continue to senior leadership as ICs, and there are people who choose to be people manager as well. So, depending on where your interest is, where your career aspiration is, and so on, you can choose to either become a people manager or an IC, right? The best thing about product manager is it's right at the center of business meeting customers kind of a point. So it's brilliant, if your aspiration is to become like the CEO, learn all the skills to be a top-notch leader, then I think product management is amazing from that perspective. At any point, I think you can, if you feel like, hey, product management is not the thing for me, you can make use of this experience to switch into general management roles.
And how common is it that people switch from product management into things like design, engineering, and within the quad that you were mentioning?
Okay, so I now almost have 8 years of experience. I have not seen anyone switch from product management to design or engineering. I have seen the opposite. I have
Okay.
seen engineers become product managers.
Is that
So
because, and I'm thinking aloud here, is that because some of those fields are slightly more technical, and product management, once you understand, then it's more strategy and marketing kind of things. So you can't get more technical when you grow up. You can always become a more of a generalist and overview person.
again, it depends on the context,
Hmm.
right? What product are you working on? Some products require you to be technical because until you understand what competencies the technology is capable of achieving, you can't really figure out what you can give to your customer, right? So, as product managers, you need to know when to zoom in and then when to have a bird's eye view and say, hey, this is enough. Having said that, I think engineers become product managers because they start working in a similar to a junior PM. I told you, right? You start by working on a problem statement, and
Hmm.
then you kind of start appreciating the problem itself and start building your competency on on product thinking. So I think engineers also start at a similar way, right? Their journey starts with, hey, this is the problem you are going to solve, now code and solve it. Then slowly they build the ability to they're just told, hey, this is the problem, now figure out how you want to solve it. And then as they grow in their career, even the problem statement is like, hey, we need to do achieve XYZ, now go ahead. So I think engineers also build their product management capabilities in a way, and it's a choice whether they want to go deep into tech. They can become architects who design how the tech system should be, or they can choose to be product managers, get more into customers business, understanding more of that and figuring out how technology can help achieve those goals for those areas, or they can choose to be software developers themselves. So again, it depends on the person what their career aspirations are.
Okay.
But it also makes sense because they're building those competencies right from day one.
Sure, sure. And Rinku, you were telling us about what's the career path of product managers, and then they keep growing.
Yeah.
In terms of global mobility, is
Mm-hmm.
there, being based in India, Bangalore, or maybe even Hyderabad, and in these offices, especially with companies being global and your tasks and products being global, do you see around you people who are like, was not Bangalore, Hyderabad, my next career move will be Menlo Park or Seattle or here or there, and
Uh,
I'll do
uh,
whatever
I,
product?
I think if you asked me this question before lockdown, I said yes, brilliant. A lot of opportunities. Book My Show was hiring in crazy numbers. Amazon was hiring in crazy numbers. I have friends working in Luxembourg, Amsterdam, and so on and so forth. But I think during the lockdown and post lockdown, it's kind of dipped. Getting those international opportunities. So those who did go, I think they went around the lockdown or before the lockdown. I'm not seen anyone go in the recent time, right? Maybe once the market improves, maybe more opportunities will be available.
So you're saying that people are still looking to do that. It's just that it isn't coming in.
It
Those
isn't.
jobs aren't available, and I've heard there's been a huge headcount reduction in some of the big tech companies in the last
Right.
2 years.
Right.
Have there been more in the engineering jobs or product management jobs or across the board?
The ratios are very different, right? Like some organizations have one PM for every 10 engineers. So it's kind of difficult to answer here. More PMs have been fired than
Hmm.
engineers, right? I think what really matters is which area do you work and how is it contributing to the organization is what really has probably a higher impact on your chances of making it through. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, are you contributing to the revenue of the organization or any of the key KRs that your organization has signed up for? And if you're working on those, then I think there's a lesser chance you get laid off, irrespective of whether you're a PM or an engineer or whatever your role.
I mean, there is a school of thought that the easiest replaceable job in a tech company is product manager. At least it doesn't have a very short term impact versus coders and engineers, and those kind of things might stop some of the work. Is that still true? Has and since you're in that field, has things like Copilot and other AI based coding and engineering apps, have they completely changed the playing field?
See, I think this field is still evolving, so we don't know where it's heading towards. Is how I would put it. Having said that, if in a project you're firing people and you have to choose between a product management and an engineer, who should you choose? I think you should choose the product manager because you need engineers to keep the system going,
Yes.
right? The code is still out there. It needs maintenance, needs someone to keep the system oiled and running. And I think engineers are the people, right? Whereas the PMs could be the thought behind it. They might be able to figure out where we should take it, how can we optimize it further, and so on, right? The strategy of the product, they might figure it out. But if for whatever reason, cost cutting, so on, you decide there's no future for this product, and if you want to keep it going, then engineers are the ones who have to keep the mission running. So it kind of makes sense from that perspective. But having said that, I'm not sure if that's how the whole layoff situation is playing out. Like I said, I don't have the numbers to justify this.
Which is why I asked, do you see being in the center, and I'm not talking about Microsoft or any
Mhm.
particular company, but in this
Mhm.
industry, do you see things like Copilot taking up a lot of engineering and other coding and tech jobs more than it ever used to in the past?
I think it again depends on the skills that you have, right?
Mhm.
If you're doing a work that is repetitive in nature, that is mind numbing in nature, and so on, then definitely Copilot is going to take over. And it can take over even a PM job, right? Well, I say PM job is a strategic role and that and this. I get specs made by Copilot, right? So when that's happening, can anybody's job be replaced? Because now AI can do even creative work, right? Not
Yes.
just codified work. So what's really important is value. Like I said, if your organization is focused on a particular KR, then how are you contributing to that is very, very important. And also upskilling and adapting to the change in tech is very important, right? So for example, you see AI coming up, and if you feel like your current role is repetitive, then AI is most probably going to replace what you do, right?
Hmm.
You have systems where you can design without any code
Yeah.
and so on. So
I mean, the
it's
way I see it, the way I have
Mhm,
seen it, if the
mhm,
job is repetitive,
mhm.
then you don't need AI to replace it. You need,
Yeah.
what do you say, algorithmic automation.
Algorithm. You can do that, and you
Yes.
can use AI also. AI involves a little bit of prediction and all, right? So earlier, for example, if you were in Facebook, there used to be a person who was sitting there, looking at different content and then flagging it off as abusive content or not, and so on, right? And then over time, they've got AI to replace that. Now, for the other person, it was kind of a repetitive job where they're looking at a video and deciding
Hmm.
yes, no, and then you can't really do an algorithm there to figure out, yes, this video is abusive in nature, this video isn't not. And so there are those kind of roles where I think AI now comes into picture. It's able to look at those videos, process, and then figure out, yes, this is abusive in nature, and flag it by itself
Yes, good. And like you said, I mean, there are creative roles also which AI is able to
to do it.
take now.
Yeah.
And from a coding perspective, I've used things like Devin and what
Mhm.
was that? Corbett. Corbett was
Yeah.
bad, really bad.
So,
I
yeah,
have
and
to say.
now GitHub comes with its own
GitHub as
copilot.
Copilot. Yes, GitHub as
Yeah.
Copilot. I've briefly used it, but I probably need to spend a bit more
Yeah.
time. And the
Mhm.
only reason I was asking is before I used to hire freelance people
Mhm.
to code some of the system that I'm building right now for my fund.
Mhm.
But more recently, instead of having five freelancers working to build thing, I get a sense if I get one good person, then
Mhm.
like you were saying in a slightly different context, 80% of the work Devin or something can do for me, and
Yeah.
I need the guy to check over it rather
Right.
than have five people do it.
Check over it, and you also need someone who's smart enough to figure out the right prompts to get the best results out of, right?
Yes.
Prompt figuring that out is very, very important, because a slight change in some keyword can give you an entirely different output from generative AI, especially.
Yes.
So having someone who's smart enough to get the best out of AI is, I think, a very important skill that you'll have to look out for going forward.
And that brings me to my favorite quote of this year, which I heard and I repeat it, I live by it, is AI is not going to take your job. It's someone who knows how to leverage AI who will.
Yeah, yes, for sure.
So Rinku, that was very informative and enlightening for me, and I'm sure for a lot of our viewers. I'll ask you one final question. What's next for Rinku?
Interesting question. I
And
really
being an
like. Mhm.
ex-consultant as well as being a typical interviewer for both positions, when I say next, I mean what's your next 1 year, what's your next 5 year, and what's your retirement
Okay.
plan looking like?
Okay. So I think for me, the way I look at it, I'm going to continue with Microsoft for the time being, because the context, like you notice, I've just been here for like 2.5 years, and I've worked in three very different areas. And Microsoft really gives you those opportunities. And I think I can really grow as a product manager if I continue with Microsoft. So that's what I'm going to do in the near future. In the long term, or not long term, but maybe 5 years down the line, I want to do something like a PhD on translating offline behavior into online behavior. So you might have heard me talking about cultural nuances, and there are certain things that we do every day offline, and how can it map to online behavior? It could be shopping for your grocery, right? That's an area that I'm really interested in. So I would love to do that, mapping consumer behavior from offline world to online, and spend time, researching into it.
Hmm.
And in the long term, and even maybe as part of my retirement plan, I actually am juggling. I mean, I have two ideas. I'm trying to figure out which one I might go with. One could be teaching, because I grew up with a lot of gaps in my understanding of how the world works, how your career could be, and so on and so forth. I would love to give that back, whatever I've learned, and help others. So teaching is one thing that I'm looking at. Another is also again consulting. So having gained all these experiences on using tech to optimize for business, and my interest in translating offline behaviors into online behavior and so on, I would love to get into a consulting kind of a role where I'm helping others also make best use of that. So that's how I'm seeing it.
Very interesting. Well, good luck and all the best in your future career moves. Rinku, I like to follow your career, and maybe if there are questions from any of our viewers who can place it in comments, if you are okay with it, if there is a direct question for you, if you can answer that, that would be lovely. But thank you again, Rinku. Thank you for coming on our
Sure.
podcast. Thank you for sparing the time on a Sunday evening, late Sunday evening, India Standard Time. Thank you. I'm pretty sure for all our viewers out here, if you have any questions on whether it's product management job, whether it is how to navigate IIM Bangalore, how do placements work at IIM, you can put those questions either to Rinku or any of us, because although I've graduated long ago, doing all these podcasts every Sunday, I start thinking that maybe I know quite a lot now than I did a year ago when we started this. So thank you for watching. Thank you once again, Rinku, and we'll see you next week for all our viewers.
Sure.
Bye
Thank
now.
you. Bye bye.